Sarah, welcome to the Promise Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. I'm very excited about this conversation.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation, and it's been a long time coming. I think I first heard about you, maybe last year from Lori Harder, and then instantly got your book. I read it in almost one sitting, Future Boards.
Aw.
Yes, it was so good. And why I'm really excited to talk with you today is because the world's changed a lot in a very short amount of time. And you're the perfect person to help people continue dreaming and really thinking about their visions and even thinking about what's next. So I want to get right into it. And one thing you said in your book, which I loved, was that you have the ability to predict your future with spooky accuracy. Tell us about that and your life story.
Oh my gosh. I feel like those are two big buckets to delve into, but I'm going to hit the first one first, which is we absolutely have the ability to predict our future. And if you don't believe that's true for yourself, all you have to do is look back through your history and you'll start to see that the things that you obsessed over, the things that maybe you stressed about or really, really wanted. So those are two different spectrums, but either way, those are manifesting, right? So we've been manifesting in positive and negative ways our entire life. It's just a natural, law of the universe. And so from my perspective, I'm like, I want to guide that. You know what I mean? Like if that's going to happen with or without my input, I think I want to put my intention out there so that I'm starting to get results that I want. And my God, I just got off the phone with a client who was giving me all these examples of how our words become our reality. And I'm a huge, huge, huge believer in that and how you can speak, your life into existence. And she had like 4 examples from the silly to the big of how quickly that happens. You say you want something and it shows up in all these different ways. So 100%, and we're going to get into that, I'm sure. But on your other question, my story is kind of where all of this started. And, for me, I think like a lot of people, sometimes it takes rock bottom or a life explosion before we wake up to our purpose or our potential. And that was absolutely true in my case, going back to 2008 now, so about 13 years ago, was the day that this all happened for me. So at that point, I had been married to my high school sweetheart for 8 years. We'd been together since we were 16 years old. We had 3 kids, supposedly kind of living the American dream, although it was starting to get pretty thin at that point because we were in the middle of the recessions. We just lost our house and filed bankruptcy. And so we were trying to navigate a tough time, like a lot of families were back then. And then one day, I read a text message on his phone while he was in the shower, and my world just exploded, bomb drop, and from my perspective, having been with him since I was 16, it was something that had never crossed my mind that he would be cheating on me or having an affair or whatever. Just, I'm not a jealous person by nature, so I had never thought twice about it. And back then there was no social media, there was no Facebook, there was, the fact that he even had a text message, I was kind of shocked because it was like the old school texting, I was like, wait, you know how to text? That's a whole nother issue. But, so, I felt like I was the only person on the planet who was going through it, who had ever gone through it, who would ever go through it. You were just in this super isolated bubble. And I literally went in, turned the water off in the shower and said, get the fuck out. You might need to edit that. But that's what I said to keep it real. And he did. He put his clothes on soaking wet, kissed the kids goodbye, and went out the front door. And it just, it felt like in 10 minutes there were still dishes in the sink, from dinner. And then all of a sudden here I am going, oh my God, what do I do? How do I literally laid on the hardwood floor. I was like, how do I literally get up off this floor and take care of my kids? How do I feed them? I was a stay-at-home mom and it was a recession and everything was in his name. I didn't have $5,
Oh my gosh.
So that was the start. That was the true explosion that started everything, because for me, I knew at that moment, even laying on the floor, my brain was going like a lot of us women do, right? We want to solve things. We're like, okay, what do I do? What do I do?
Mhm.
And I just kept on thinking, I can't get a job because I have two twins that are a year old and daycare is crazy. Like every solution I was putting out there just seemed impossible. And right in that moment, I think instinctually, or whatever power you want to give credit to, I had this moment where it was like, hey, what if I can? What if I can survive this? If I can, what does that look like? And then secondly, I knew I had a choice. I could either drop off the face of the earth and do what a lot of people can do. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can turn to in horrible situations,
Yeah.
or I could figure it out and survive. And thank God I got off the floor, and it started from there.
That's crazy. No one can prepare you for anything like that. The emotional roller coaster, the mindset. I mean, literally your whole entire world crumbling. I mean, you were doing life with this person. So no one can ever, you would never think or imagine that it would come to an chapter like that. And,
Right.
and so what happened then as you're thinking, okay, I love how you talk about what if, because it's so powerful. And the concept of what if, how did you start to put the pieces back together?
Yeah, I am so passionate about that. I think because in that moment, the darkest of darkest moments of my entire life, our brain always wants to go to every positive, negative what if. I mean, possible negative what if, right? That's just kind of, I think, how most of us work. We're thinking like, what if this is a failure? What if I can't do it? What if whatever? And in that moment, as I'm going through all these lists of how I could try and figure it out, and I was just hitting, I can't. In that moment, I swear I heard something, whether it was inside of me or whatever, that was like, what if you can? And I think all it did was it threw me a lifeline of hope. Like there could be something on the other side of this. And because the place I was in was so bleak, I reached for that and hung to that with all of my strength. And all I needed was a tiny ray of light. And so from then on, like immediately I filed for divorce that week, sold every single thing that I own, wedding rings, like everything, so that I could raise enough money to get an apartment. And through those first like 3 months of total struggle, that thought of what if I can make this work was the thing I kept on coming back to. Like, what if this is okay? What if I can figure it out? What if we survive?
Yeah.
And so for all of your listeners out there, I think it is one of the simplest, most powerful tools we can give ourselves. Because like I said, whenever you're in a situation that is either scary or fear-based, or maybe you're starting a new business or whatever the case is, our brain is already trying to flush out all those negative what ifs. It's telling you all the things that can go wrong. And if you can pause and have the presence of mind to just pause for a second and flip every one of those over and just say, well, what if I succeed? What if I'm great at this? What if it turns out better than I ever thought? And all of a sudden, all these questions open and possibility opens. And then you're able to start figuring it out, in a way that you can't if all you're saying is, what if I fail? It is much harder to figure out your next steps if that's the voice you're listening to.
So powerful. It's so true. It's so true. And now I'm sure a lot of people are actually wondering, okay, what if we can't pay rent next month? And what if inflation goes through the roof? And what if we lose our jobs? Whatever it is, there's so many external circumstances right now that are constantly changing, constantly moving. And that's why I'm so happy we're having this conversation, because it's going to help a lot of people that you've already gone through so many upheavals where there are constantly moving benchmarks that you have to navigate, and you've still managed to achieve many of the things on your future board, vision board, even in the middle of a pandemic. So at what point did you start to harness the mental voice, what if, and actually put it on paper, or actually start to create this kind of vision of your future life that you've now come to be known for?
Yeah. So I think, if I go back to the very beginning of getting that first apartment, trying to find that first job. And then when I finally did land the first job, that literally paid just enough to cover rent and daycare. I started kind of dropping into these daydreams of what does this new life look like? You know what I mean? I had no template for it whatsoever, because everything that I had ever planned was wiped away in a moment, right? So every dream I had for the future, everything I thought I was going to be as a woman, as a mother, as a wife, whatever, all of that was gone. And in a way, it gave me a lot of freedom. And I saw a blank slate. And so I thought, well, shit, if I have to create it anyway, like I have to, right? So why not figure out what it is that I want and start thinking about what this could be? And my attitude was kind of like, if I don't get there, who cares? Like, I'm already at the very bottom. Like, I was on food stamps. I was like, it doesn't get worse than this. So, dreaming about great possibilities, I got nothing to lose, you know? And I think, man, if more people took that attitude, they would free themselves from the hangups of dreaming big, because, this idea of, well, what if it doesn't happen and I'm disappointed? Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
Who cares? Like, if I have a 1% chance of living anything on my future board, that is certainly a whole lot better than a 0. And I'll take it every day of the week. And so that was my initial kind of thought process. So I started daydreaming about it, really just old school, like I did as a little kid. And I started seeing it like a little movie in my head and asking myself questions like, if I'm successful, what does that look like? What does that mean I can do? The big one, what does that mean I can do? How does it change my life? And so I started thinking, well, if I'm successful, I can go on vacation. And here I was, like, hardly putting food on the table. So the idea of vacation was ludicrous, but it made me happy to think about. And that's the difference, right? So instead of all day long, every day, thinking about my current situation, which was black and dark and very hard, I started dropping into these daydreams of not what I thought was possible, because I did not think it was possible back then, but it just made me happy anyway. And I'm so grateful, because that is how you close the gap and how you manifest faster, is if you can switch your thoughts from your current reality, no matter what it is, into your future reality, into what you want, you will draw it to you that much faster. And so that first board was really, I just remember when my boss was gone at lunch, back when, we were not supposed to print color pictures on our thing. I went on Google Images and I just started putting together what was in my head. I was like, okay, what does the vacation look like? What does the corner office look like? All of these definitions of quote unquote what success was, and also who I wanted to be as a woman. So I went beyond that. Like, what does it look like now as a single mom? How do I show up for my kids? How do I take care of myself? So I had all these different things on there that was truly a complete life. It was kind of end to end. And I put it behind my computer at my desk and didn't think anything of it. And just all day, every day, I found myself daydreaming about all those pictures. And about a year and a half later, it just all started coming to life, like spooky. It was like, I had a picture of Times Square on there, and all of a sudden I'm in a work trip and I'm standing in the middle of Times Square, and I'm like, wait a second.
I love that part of your story.
Like,
I already have chills because I read that part of your book and I was like, wait, what? So you're going to have to tell that story because it's too good.
Yeah. So that was the very first time that I recognized that I was manifesting something, because the picture that I had, I had all these, again, pictures of the life I wanted. And so one of them right in the middle of the board was a picture of Times Square. And above it, I had written New York City, baby. Like, like I want to go to New York. And so I'd been looking at this picture for about a year and a half now, right? Because I'd been at my desk. And I just remember one day my boss pulling me into his office, and I'd just gotten a promotion. And he was like, hey, listen, we've got to go to New York. We have this trade show, blah, 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 blah. And here's all the things I want you to do. And, can you make sure the kids have daycare, do what you got to do, but we're leaving next week. And I remember I came back to my desk and I was in that panic mode of like, oh my God, how can I, I felt so out of my depth, and how a lot of people get that sense of imposter syndrome. Like I'd just been promoted to this big job and was really scared. I wanted to do a good job and all of that. And so I was dealing with all of that in the moment, and like getting my itinerary printed and whatnot. And all of a sudden I saw that picture and I was like, wait a second. I literally had the itinerary in my hand, just grabbed it off the printer to New York City. And I'm so grateful that I kind of made that connection, because that whole trip just felt like an out of body experience. It felt like a Cinderella moment, here I was in New York City for a week on the company Black Card, like living this alternate universe that really didn't look anything like my life back home. But what the universe does is it gives you samples of what you want all the time. Mm-hmm. And so what I had identified on that first board and what I teach now is those moments and experiences. That's what has always driven me, is I want a life that I can look back and it's a full photo album and it's just gorgeous. Right. And so everything that I had put on that board and every subsequent board has been about that. Like I want to be in Times Square and smell chestnuts and hear the horns and have my selfie moment, and so then when it happens, it's this crazy out of body, I'm so lucky to be alive type moment. And that's how every manifestation feels when you're living a conscious life and creating a life that you want.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's so wonderful to feel the hope that comes with having that kind of a vision of living a full life. And for so many people, it can look different, right? Everybody's
every one of us. Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, so all of this is happening. You're creating your life. You're getting these glimpses. You're rewiring your identity at a fundamental level, that you are now in a new role. You are a new persona in the world.
Oh,
and
completely.
Let's say people are listening to this, and I always love giving people tactical, because I'm sure people are wanting to replicate a lot of these things that you're talking about. So one of the questions I had coming into this conversation and reading your book was, okay, tell me the difference between a vision board and a future board.
Oh my God. I get that question a lot, because they're so fundamentally different. And I think even if I go back to that first board, again, I knew nothing. Like my only exposure to personal development or self-help was the Oprah show back in the day, and, right. and she only did shows kind of focused on that once in a while. So it wasn't like it was an immersion process. There was no podcast to listen to or anything. So I didn't know much about any of it. Mm-hmm. And my initial kind of the way that I went about it was so different than how anyone does vision boards, because I first identified what I want. So I don't know if everyone caught that in how I, in my story, but that was the first thing I did. I started daydreaming about what I wanted. And then I asked myself some tough questions. What does success look like for you, Sarah? Just like you said, it's going to be different for Ashley. It'll be different for Sarah, it'll be different for every listener. And if I don't know what that looks like for me, how the hell am I going to achieve it? Right. Like, what is it? I'm just going to be hunting and never satisfied, never happy. And I did not want to live that type of life. I wanted to love my life at every stage. I wanted to enjoy being a parent of little kids and big kids, whatever, I really wanted to be present. And so when I went to find the pictures, I did not go to magazines. So throw your magazines away or just read them for fun with a glass of wine. They are not where you're going to find your dreams. It's impossible. And if you just think of it from a very logical perspective, if I've identified what I want in every area of my life, what are the chances I'm going to find that in Harper's Bazaar?
So interesting.
It is zero. So all you're going to do is you're going to flip through and you're going to let a magazine tell you that you like tacos. Cool. If you want to manifest tacos, knock yourself out. But I, for one, have a lot bigger plans, So that was the big thing, is that I had gone on and tried to find images that represented what I already knew I wanted. So I was literally searching for the car that I imagined driving when I got that first big bonus check, for the handbag I dreamed of walking into Louis Vuitton and buying. So it wasn't just a bunch of random material things. They were representative of when wealth and abundance grows, when success is growing, this is how it shows up in my life. Like, this is how my life changes. And so the most important elements, I would say, is number one, your pictures really, really matter. They have to match what is in your head. So you have to know what's in your head first. So we always start there with identifying our dreams, always. And then we're always looking for moments and experiences. And so just like that picture of Times Square, to me, it was about what would it feel like to be standing in Times Square and have that moment of, wow, I'm here. I'm, the girl on food stamps and I've arrived, like what would that feel like?
Yeah.
And so every single picture told that story, right? And so that's how you can emotionally connect and attach that desire to those daydreams so that it will close the gap between that feels impossible to, of course, that's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it happens organically over time if you're doing it kind of in that sequence and doing it from a place of purity in your heart.
I'm so glad you said that, because that leads perfectly into my next question about sequencing. And you talked about how you have to have the picture in your head first, but you said something about how in the book there's a difference between the dream and the money, and it's a matter of sequence. So
yeah,
talk to us about really the truth of the sequence.
Yeah. So people have got to separate their dreams from money. And I know this is really hard, goes against everything like every instinct that you have, but dreams and money are not the same thing at all. So if I look back on my first couple of boards that I did, there wasn't one single thing on a board of 50 plus pictures that I could have paid for. Right. So every single dream on there was way beyond any budget I could ever come up with, even future salary budgets. Right. And so had I just made a board of what I thought I could do or accomplish or pay for, we would not be having this conversation, period. I would have done what everyone else does, and they manifest one or two little things and you're like on with your life. Right. But because I was coming from a place of, hey, it can't get any worse, so I'm going to shoot big, I kind of bypassed all of those questions in my head of what, when, where, how, why, and let myself dream really, really huge, which is the key, guys. So you should be dreaming 5 years ahead. They should be huge dreams. And then the piece about letting go of the money. So I'll give you a quick example. One of my favorite manifestations still to this day is when I'd asked my son when I put my second board together, what he wanted. Cause I was like, well, I have all my pictures. So, if you could do one thing, or if we could do one thing, what would it be? And we had just seen the movie The Blind Side. And he goes, I want to go to a Ravens game and I want to meet Michael Orr.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
I was like, shit, cause like that voice in your head that's like, how, when, whatever.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like it might not have kicked in for any of my dreams. It was much different when you're putting your kid's dream up there, because every parent kind of wants to make something happen for them. Right. Yeah. And you do want to like protect them against disappointment. But I thought, you know what? Nope. We're going to fight that and we're going to put it up anyway. And again, what's the worst that can happen? We don't go, which is what would happen anyway. So who cares? So I put it up there. And about 9 months later, we get an opportunity where I'd been coaching one of their former players who gave us tickets. And I was like, well, that's something's here, right? I was being present enough to recognize the manifestation. But I had just been laid off. And so I was right back to kind of where things were really scary and uncertain. But I thought, there's a manifestation here and I don't want to be the one who's missing it because I have fear. And so I checked my airline flights and sure enough, I had enough for both tickets and we went. And there was still that component of meeting Michael Orr that was not part of the thing. And we get there and we went to pick up our tickets and they wound up being, the player had gotten us, whatever you call it, sideline passes.
Oh gosh.
And had reached out to Michael Orr and told him. And so there's this moment where Michael walks across the entire field, walks right up to my son, and puts out his hands and I heard you've been looking for me.
Oh my
And it was
gosh.
just, and I think if we're talking money, I think I spent under $200 for
Wow.
that entire, I mean, millionaires can't buy an experience like that. So that's what I'm talking about. You have got to let the dream be, put it into the universe and let the universe figure out how it's supposed to come to you. If I had told my son, hey, I can't afford that, I don't know how to make that happen, we would have never lived that experience. And now he plays the same position Michael Orr plays at the Oregon Ducks. So,
Gosh. It's so
It's-
good.
it sparked it.
It's so good. And it made me emotional to hear you tell that story, because there's the part of me, and I'm sure so many people listening to this, where we want to dream about it. We want to put it up there. We want to believe that it's real. And also, I fall into that second category of people that you talk about, the thinker,
Yeah,
where
thinker, yep.
my brain is compulsive about thinking
Mhm.
about the how. And you address this so beautifully in your book about the difference between the thinker and the dreamer and how each need to approach the whole manifestation process. So please, for the thinkers out there, can you
Yeah.
walk us through the process of actually getting to this result that you get to enjoy?
Yeah. So when I wrote the first book, Hustle, Believe, Receive, I, I hadn't really flushed that out yet, I guess. I hadn't really thought about it because I am a dreamer. And so I kind of thought, oh, everybody can do that, right? And I remember I was at a live workshop one day and we were doing an exercise that I walk everybody through that's in the book, where you're really supposed to dream these big, big dreams. And to me, it's the most fun thing in the world. As a dreamer, I'm like, oh my God, I could do this all day long. It's like candy. And I look out into the audience and I see like half of the faces are terrified and are just like, oh my God, what is she talking about? And the other ones are like, yay, candy. And it was just a split second of, I was like, wait a second, who's a dreamer? I was like, raise your hand. Who's an analytical or more of a thinker? And it was like this mix, and it was exactly matched to their faces. And I left there going, wait a second, we approach all of this, everything I talk about, from two very different places. And in order to get what we want, we have to have components of both. We have to be this gorgeous little cocktail of dreamer and thinker. Because for me, having been a dreamer my whole life did not mean that I was living any of those dreams until I started learning this stuff that I teach now, because I didn't have any of the execution pieces. It was like most dreamers, in that I could see what possibility looked like, but then I got really overwhelmed and really disheartened when I started thinking about, oh my God, there's this huge canyon between where I am now and where I want to go. And it's too big, too much, too everything. So I'm just going to stay where I'm at. And then when I started learning what I teach now about, you can write it down. There's literally tools that will help you flesh out what that gap looks like, how to close that gap. There's actions you can take every single day that get you one step closer. I literally had to bring in some of the elements of a thinker. I had to have a skill set that could, in a way that was not overwhelming, flush out some benchmarks, flush out a pathway. And then once I did that, I was like, oh my God, there's truly nothing you can't manifest, nothing you can't accomplish, because you have both. And I think the struggle for thinkers, and you can tell me if this is true for you, is that because the analytical mind is so strong, because you are very good at plans, right? Probably very good at spreadsheets and Googling and research and kind of knowing everything, that it's very hard to jump the canyon and be on the other side and imagine what doesn't exist at all, right? And so once I realized that, I thought, they need to learn how to get there, and I need to learn how to do what they do. And so the new book really teaches you how to approach everything from the question of what do I want, to how do I get obsessed, to how do I write, everything from those two mindsets. So if you're a dreamer, it's going to be easy for you to come up with what you want, what the best version looks like. If you're a thinker, you need to know that there's going to be some blocker questions that come up in your head.
Mhm.
What, when, where, how, why.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to use the tools to turn those off and move forward anyway, right? Because if you don't, you're not ever going to get to those best versions. You're going to go one little step at a time and you're going to get frustrated, right? Whereas if you bring in that element of knowing how to dream big, you can exponentially grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
It's powerful. It's powerful when you know those other pieces. It really is.
it is. And I feel like the whole thing is a process of unlearning and
Mhm.
relearning how to integrate the dream and how to
Yeah.
realize, okay, you don't have to know the how, because
Yes.
there's so many times where the dream feels really great and also really overwhelming if you're the one that has to execute it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And there's so many times where you couldn't know the how, even if you tried. So, the example with Michael Orr, when we first put that picture of Raven Stadium on our board, I could never have figured out the how to that anyway. You know what I mean? I would have hit a dead end after dead end. I would have been trying to shove a square peg in a round hole. It just would not have worked. But just letting it go and just saying, hey, wouldn't that be an amazing experience? Wouldn't that be one of those highlights of a lifetime that I would enjoy living? And if it comes true, amazing. If it doesn't, I'm not sweating it. I'm not sitting here freaking out. So putting it out there. So there's definitely some of those dreams that you'll be able to do that with, something that seems really far-fetched like that. And then the ones that are closer to your heart, like, what if I wrote that book, or what if I started that business, or what if I met the love of my life? Those are sometimes a little bit harder to push through what's holding us back, and to let go of the how. Do a lot of dating coaching, and that's a hard one to put out the dream of what you want, and then to focus all your energy internally and let everything else go is tough, but it does take practice. And if you have the steps, and are kind of taught what to do, then it's just repeatable, and it gets easier and easier and easier.
I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. I'm enjoying it so much, by the way. And
Thank you. I am too. I love it.
I know it's going to help a lot of people. And I want to narrow in on one of the words that you said earlier, which was blocks, because let's say you start manifesting, you're manifesting some small things that it's like a trickle, right? But it's not the full river of possibility that you would like to experience. Or maybe it's not happening. For some reason, you've reached a certain level. It's almost like you've capped the amount of joy, love, experiences, whatever it is that you feel the capacity to experience, whatever it is. And so you feel blocked. But how do you investigate whether it's a legitimate external force, like fragility in the world, social demographic constructs, whatever it is, versus an internal block that you just need to work through?
Yeah. Such a good question. And I will say, from my own experience and the experience of coaching these methods for over a decade, that it's always our internal blocks. I can't even come up with one example where it was forces outside of our control, because the universe has ways to put things together that are so far beyond those external forces, that can knock down walls that we could never knock down, that could open opportunities that we couldn't have forced, that can, give us a moment that we couldn't have made happen if we tried. That if we do our work, so if we do the work to get clear on those dreams, if we do our one step every day towards those dreams, if we put our hustle in, if we focus on it, if we begin talking about it and doing the actions that get us there. So that, to me, that's all my own hustle, if you will, right? So I might have a dream, and I have lots of them behind me on this board. Every single time I do a board, I can't create a path to any of that stuff. So that's big. I want everyone to take a quick minute. So if you had a board, a thing on there was something you could create a path to today, that's scary, right? You're looking at a very different life every time you look at this board. It's kind of pushing the envelope, pushing the envelope. But I know that if I am doing my work, again, focusing on the dream, changing my thoughts and my mindset to align with the dream, turning off the negative voice that would be sabotaging it or blocking it, doing the actions, taking opportunities when they come. Remember, I wouldn't have that Michael Oher moment if I wasn't willing to take that flight, even though all I had was $200, right? So it was scary. There was an opportunity there and I could either decline it or take it. You're going to really learn how to take them, scary or not, because those are the things that up level you time after time after time. And I think understanding kind of what it is that's blocking you, it's always going to come down to your belief system. And it's going to come down to what you're telling yourself. So if I believe I'm not worthy of having this life or these moments, then I'm going to start manifesting no's, right? And that will be coming from me. That will be coming from my belief system. So I can say that I want the next level. I could say that I want success. I could say that I want financial abundance. But if my belief is I don't deserve it and that I'll never get it, then all the opportunities that were trying to bring it to me will shut down. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes sense. It makes total sense.
If I then change it and say, I am worthy, I am deserving, abundance is free flowing no matter what. And when abundance comes to me, it takes away from no one. That's a big one. My abundance takes away from nobody else. Right. So when I am able to change that, the signal is changed, the results then change, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I've coached people all over the world from every possible background, and it will work every time. You just have to do the work, and it's in layers, and it takes soul searching, and it takes time.
I feel like the way you answered that question is going to create a situation where so many people are going to want to work with you just by listening to what you're saying right now, because probably a lot of people are reflecting and saying, oh, wow, I'm not manifesting things as quickly as I would like, or all the wrong things. Yeah. And this indicates that there's a lot of work that needs to be done internally. And also probably many people have a lot of questions like, okay, but we've lived in a pandemic at the time of this recording. It's been 18 months. And one thing you shared with me privately is that kind of hasn't really stopped you. What has your experience been like?
So it's interesting. I think a lot of people can relate to this. The pandemic kind of brought about two things, if we're looking in big buckets, right? For a lot of people, there are people who thought, okay, I have this extra time. How do I use it wisely? How do I get ready for my next whatever dream to happen, adventure to come, whatever it is we've been working on? How do I hate the word, but pivot, right? How do I change things up to make it work for me instead of getting frustrated that what I was doing before can't work anymore? And then there's people who are like, I'm just going to sit around and wait for it to pass. And a year and a half later, like, shit, people I knew are way farther down the road than I am. I was just sitting around waiting for it to happen. So I think in general, that's a great metaphor about how life is all the time. Right. But the beautiful part is we have a choice always. So whether you were one of those people who got exponentially closer to your dream, started new dreams, expanded in whatever ways, or if you're one of those people who are like, wow, everything's opened back up and I feel like I'm behind the curve, you can make that decision today to say, great, now what do I need to do to catch up to my dreams, to start making them happen? So I think it showed us, it leveled the playing field in a lot of ways, because the whole globe has been going through it at once. But it was kind of teaching us lessons that have always been there, just in a wider lens. And the thing that I want everybody to know is that no matter where you find yourself today, you have an absolute choice to make tomorrow completely different. You have a choice to make next year look nothing like this year. And I'm not just saying that to say that. I will say that everybody who has built a board using these methods, followed the plan, practices it on a daily basis, has almost an unrecognizable life a year and a half later. So 18 months is a good timeline for a good half of your board to come true. Mind you, that might be very terrifying to half the people listening to this, right? We say we want a lot of stuff and we want, but change is tough, even when it's good change. And so I think for me, that first 18 months after everything happened and that first board was coming to life so quickly, that it was kind of like a wild, roller coaster ride. It was like, holy crap, every day is a little bit different. Things are happening. And I'm glad I embraced it, because it's been that way for 10 years. And I would never have it any other way. Right. Like, I want every day to feel like what's going to happen next, like what's coming, like, how am I going to grow? What opportunity is coming? How am I going to deal with this adversity to get me closer to what I want to do? And, so for me, I started a podcast. I got took care of myself in a much better way, lost some weight, took care of myself in ways that I had been putting off before this. And spent the year, especially that first year, getting ready to be ready for what's happening right now. And there's a lot of big things popping off right now that if I had not spent that last year getting ready, there's no way I could embrace them.
Are you able to tell us about some of the things? Are they secret?
I have two very exciting opportunities I can't totally disclose right now, but I will say they are 100% linked to something very intentional that I put into the universe right at the beginning of 2020. And that I knew, so I put this dream out there, and maybe some of you can relate to this. I put this dream out there, but I knew it did not match my reality. Right? I knew there was work I had to do to be in a place where I could accept an opportunity if it came. And I also knew I wasn't doing it. Right. So when COVID hit, I was like, well, here's the time to get all that shit taken care of and be ready. And I'm so glad I did, because we're in talks right now to do exactly what I wanted to do back then. And I'm so glad that I'm ready to say yes when that happens, because had this been 2 years ago, I would not have been. All those blocks would have completely sabotaged something that I truly wanted. But I also have a new book coming out. So that's the other thing that I nailed down this last year.
When is that coming out?
So that'll be out in the fall. It's called All the Things I Wish I Knew: Advice for Women. And it's just a compilation of, I have a women's coaching circle, and it's a compilation of all the advice from the silly to the important, like we've been talking about today, and everything in between, everything I wish someone told me, right? All the things I'm telling my daughters. So that'll be out this fall.
That is so exciting. Okay. So everybody needs to follow you to find out when the secret is revealed about all these things you've been working on. And truthfully, that's why I started this podcast, was because of that reason. All the things I wish I knew. Like, I want to be able to speak with people and learn and hopefully provide a platform for you and others to be showcased in your brilliance and help so many other people as well. So
yeah,
the time is completely flying. I have so many more questions for you. I'm going to hone in on one thing, which I think is really, really key. And then I want to hear just a fun question for you. But let's say people, they are more advanced in the manifestation space. They're having a lot of wins. Everything seems to be going really well. But at a certain point, they've already experienced all the things on their vision board to the point where they can't even imagine anything next. So what is your advice to them for people who have trouble dreaming of what's next when they have a block around this?
Great question. And I think I ran into that on board too, for sure, because, that first board was, again, such a stretch from what my reality was at the time that I thought, oh, that's the best case scenario of everything, but then it had started, coming true so quickly. I would say 99, pretty much everything but Oprah has manifested from that board, that original board. So and within 2 years, most of it had. So all of a sudden I was 2 years later, when it was time to make the second board, I was kind of like, I don't even know where to go. Like what on earth is bigger than what I've already done?
Yeah.
And again, I didn't know a lot at that point. I was kind of just going with my gut. And I remember I put a picture of a private jet on there because I was like, okay, so this is the most impossible thing on the planet. It's the farthest my brain can go. And if this happens, then I know I'm onto something. This was almost kind of like was that a fluke? And whatever, it was like my little test. And I flew on a private jet about a year later. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm not making this up. This is crazy. So now, knowing what I know, I teach everybody to make a brand new board and try as hard as you can to come from a blank slate, which again is going to take some work, right? You're going to have to push past some blocks to get there. We do that at the first week of every year. So I personally try to do it on January 1st. Every year I slot that day as my personal day to set intention. I redo the homework in future boards and in my first book, Hustle, Believe, Receive. I write the story of my future life. I find all new pictures. I try really hard to push myself to find new dreams so that it doesn't happen like that. So that you're not having plateau and then losing a year, because you really will. Like if we're talking manifesting timelines, I'd say 3 months to 18 months is kind of when things really start to change. I'm sorry, but I don't want to waste a year of momentum.
Right.
I want to continually to push and continually to grow that so that my plateaus level off and the curve for the most part is going up, 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 right? That doesn't mean we don't have disappointments and side journeys, because we absolutely do, because our plans and the universe has its own way of getting us where we want to go. But it is how you are continually scoping what is next for your life, and growing and growing and growing so that you're not hitting that kind of max out stage and then waiting to redefine and stuff. It pushes you annually for sure.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing that you've ever manifested?
Oh my God. There's been so many. I mean, obviously the ones I've shared are some highlights, but I think personally, if I'm talking my dream, not just ones for my kids and the family, landing in Venice was a dream come true. Going down the Grand Canal. That was something that I've wanted to do since I was 17 years old. When I first watched the movie Only You way back, if anyone knows old school movies, I've seen that movie 100 times easily. And it just, to live that movie in real life and live something that always seemed like the most impossible kind of push for me personally. And then to have my kids in the gondola with me and just, I mean, to me, that was joy personified. Those are always going to be some of the most special moments of my entire life.
It's magical.
Yeah.
Sarah, I want to honor you for taking the time today to share your dreams with us, all of this knowledge that you've accumulated through your story and every step of the journey. Just taken a lot of work. And yes, you've completed these future boards and you've done all these wonderful things, but it takes a lot of work behind the scenes to enjoy what you do and how you serve people. So I really want to honor you for that. And I'm really grateful to get this inside glimpse into the whole process. So thank you for being here today.
Oh my gosh, Ashley, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share it, and for doing the work yourself, and reading the book and making your board and having those changes happen. And I'm excited to hear how the listeners do it as well.
Exactly.
It's life-changing stuff for sure.
It's completely life-changing. So where can people find you if they want to dig into some of these blocks and have you help them or show you their results? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so 2 places. As far as social media stuff goes, Instagram is kind of my jam. That's pretty much where I'm at. And it's just at Sarah Centrella. And then anything you want to know about retreats, workshops, books, whatever, you can go to sarahcentrella.com. And it's all there. And there's free resources on there as well. I have a free video on manifesting that can be a good starting point for folks.
Sarah, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.